The desert night was black as gun oil, broken only by the faint glow of chemlights marking the perimeter. Sergeant First Class Mara Lane moved silently through the forward operating base, her boots crunching against loose gravel, breath fogging in the chill. She had been in country long enough to know every sound: the diesel hum of generators, the restless scuff of boots, the nervous coughs of privates who couldn't sleep. But tonight there was something different. She slid the M4 rifles one by one into the armory rack, quiet as a priest laying out ritual candles. Lane was meticulous, she always had been, but there was more to it now. Her movements carried the heavy discipline of habit and the fragile weight of secrets. Nobody noticed her. She looked like any other NCO double-checking equipment before rotation. Then the captain walked in. "Lane," Captain Rollins said, his tone casual as he pulled open a dusty logbook. His eyes skimmed down the page. He was only half awake, bleary from too much coffee and too little rest. Then he froze. His fingers stopped at a line scrawled in tight handwriting. A code name. Crosswind. Lane felt her stomach lurch. She kept her hands steady on the cold steel barrel of the last rifle, but she knew Rollins had seen it. That name wasn't supposed to appear in any logbook. Not here. Not in this war. Rollins looked up sharply. What the hell is this? Before Lane could answer, the base alarm blared. The siren shredded the night, followed by a deafening boom in the distance. Mortars. The ground trembled under her boots. Soldiers spilled from tents, grabbing helmets, rifles, and body armor. The war had found them. The ambush. Within minutes, Lane was out the gate with her platoon, dust rising as armored Humvees tore down the dirt road. The enemy was probing the perimeter with indirect fire, a common tactic. But Lane knew better. Mortars weren't meant to destroy, they were meant to herd. Someone wanted them moving. She rode shotgun, headset crackling with comms chatter. Second squad, push north. Third squad, cover the south. Copy, copy. Her driver, Private Ellis, was white-knuckled on the wheel. Sergeant, where do you want us? Keep us in the middle. Don't chase shadows. If they want us stretched thin, we make them come to us. Her voice was calm, but inside she was calculating. The insurgents had been growing bolder, smarter. Last week, an IED had taken out an entire convoy. The week before, a sniper had clipped 2 engineers while they repaired a water line. The enemy adapted always. Tonight smelled like a trap. Sure enough, as their lead Humvee crested a ridge, a fireball ripped upward. Shrapnel clanged off their armored hull, and Lane felt the heat even from inside the cabin. The lead vehicle was gone, 4 soldiers swallowed in flame. Ambush. Rollins' voice barked over the net. Return fire. Tracer rounds lanced across the dark, lighting up the ridge line. Lane slammed her fist against the dashboard. Ellis, hard right. Get us into defilade. Bullets smacked against armor as the Humvee jerked into a shallow wadi. Lane shoved open the door, rifle up. The air was hot with smoke and dust, the stench of burning fuel mixing with coppery blood. Second fire team on me, she shouted. Her soldiers scrambled to her side. Alvarez, big and steady, Dorsey, young and trigger-happy, and Kim, quiet but sharp-eyed. Together they bounded up the slope, rifles barking. The insurgents had dug in with PKM machine guns and RPGs, their muzzle flashes giving them away. Lane sighted one, squeezed the trigger and watched him drop. She felt nothing. She hadn't felt anything in a long time. Then she heard Alvarez shout, "Contact left flank." She turned just as another RPG whooshed past, exploding against a Humvee. Men screamed. Lane dropped to the dirt, cursed under her breath and crawled forward, bullets chewing the ground around her. She was moving on instinct now, her mind narrowing to the immediate. Cover, fire, reload, advance. But underneath that, buried deep, a question gnawed at her. Who had written the word Crosswind in that logbook? Fire and smoke. The firefight lasted 15 minutes, though it felt like a lifetime. When the shooting finally died, the ridge was littered with bodies. Insurgents melted away into the dark, leaving behind blood and brass. The platoon held the ground, but the cost was steep. 2 vehicles destroyed, 6 men dead, 9 wounded. Lane stood among the wreckage, helmet askew, rifle dangling at her side. Her chest heaved with exhaustion, but her eyes were sharp, scanning the horizon. Always scanning. Rollins approached, dust and soot streaking his face. He looked at her like a man who had seen too much and understood too little. "You held it together out there, Lane," he said quietly. "Damn good work." She nodded but said nothing. Praise meant nothing when body bags lay cooling in the dirt. Then Rollins' gaze hardened. "But we're gonna circle back to that name. Crosswind. You want to tell me what the hell that was about? Lane's jaw tightened. She wanted to lie to brush it off as a clerical error. But Rollins wasn't an idiot. He'd dig and eventually he'd find something. Something she wasn't ready for anyone to find. Before she could answer, a medevac Black Hawk thundered in, rotors whipping dust into the night. The wounded were loaded. The dead were zipped up. Lane turned away, shoulders stiff, carrying a weight heavier than her rucksack. She wasn't just fighting insurgents anymore. She was fighting her past. The return. Back at the FOB, the mood was grim. Soldiers cleaned rifles in silence. The mess hall was quieter than a chapel. Everyone knew tonight had been too close. Lane sat at a metal table, staring at her untouched tray of chow. Alvarez dropped across from her, sweat still caked on his skin. "You see Ellis?" he asked. Lane shook her head. "Kid's rattled. Thinks he almost got us all killed by hesitating." Alvarez shrugged. "You should talk to him. You've got that way with people." Lane almost laughed. She didn't have a way with people. She had a way with rifles, ambushes, and scars no one wanted to look at. Still, Alvarez was right. Alice needed grounding. She found him by the motor pool, sitting on an overturned crate, helmet dangling from his hand. He was 19, barely shaving, eyes glassy with shock. "Private," Lane said, her voice firm but not unkind. He snapped up, guilty as a kid caught smoking. "Sarge, I..." "Stop." She sat beside him. For a while they just listened to the clatter of tools and distant hum of generators. Then she said, "You did what I told you. That's your job. My job is to make the call. You kept the vehicle moving. You didn't freeze. That saved lives." Alice blinked at her, uncertain. "But the lead truck..." "Wasn't your fault," Lane cut in. "This war doesn't care about fair. Sometimes you get to walk away. Sometimes you don't. That's it." For a moment, Alice looked like he might cry. But he swallowed it down, nodded, and forced a shaky grin. "Guess I'll stick to driving then?" Lane almost smiled. Almost. Quiet conversations. Later that night, Rollins called her into the TOC. The air smelled of stale coffee and sweat. Maps covered the walls, red pins marking enemy activity. Rollins stood by the logbook, the word Crosswind circled in pen. "You ready to talk yet?" he asked. Lane met his gaze, her face unreadable. "It's nothing, sir. A name from back home. Old habit." Rollins raised an eyebrow. "Old habit." She nodded. "Yeah. My dad used to say it when the wind shifted during hunting season. I write it sometimes. Keeps me sharp." It wasn't the truth, not by a mile, but it was smooth enough to pass. For now. Rollins studied her a long moment, then sighed. "Lane, you're one of my best NCOs. But I need transparency. Secrets get soldiers killed." She saluted, crisp and cold. "Understood, sir." As she left the TOC, Lane's heart pounded. Because the truth was this. Crosswind wasn't her father's word. It was hers. And it belonged to a history she had buried, a history that could unravel everything if anyone dug too deep. Dawn. By dawn, the base was buzzing again. Patrols rolled out. Intel briefings spun theories about insurgent movements. Helicopters ferried supplies. War didn't pause for grief. Lane stood by the perimeter wall, watching the sunrise bleed orange across the desert. Her rifle hung from its sling, her eyes hard. Every soldier carried ghosts. Tonight, hers had been stirred awake. Alvarez joined her, lighting a cigarette with shaking hands. "Think they'll hit us again?" Lane exhaled slowly. "Count on it." He chuckled grimly. "Hell of a welcome to another day in paradise." Lane didn't laugh. Her mind was elsewhere, already calculating, already preparing. Because she knew one thing with absolute certainty. The insurgents weren't the only threat. The word Crosswind had surfaced again. And that meant her past was closing in. And when it did, it would come with fire, smoke, and consequences none of them were ready for. The desert sunrise burned red across the horizon, the color of blood smeared on canvas. Sergeant Mara Lane adjusted her Kevlar strap and squinted into the glare. Around her, the FOB throbbed with activity. Mechanics wrenching in the motor pool, comms officers barking coordinates, medics loading another flight of wounded onto a Black Hawk. The war machine never slept. But Lane's mind wasn't on the mission reports or the cratered Humvee hulks still smoldering outside the wire. Her thoughts circled the word Rollins had seen in the logbook. Crosswind. That word was a scar carved into her history. She had buried it years ago, buried it deep, but like shrapnel that works its way back to the surface, it had come crawling out again. If Rollins pushed harder, if command started sniffing. She shook the thought away. She couldn't afford distraction. Not now, not with the insurgents circling like wolves. Patrol orders. The platoon gathered in the briefing tent. The air was heavy with sweat, dust, and nervous energy. Captain Rollins stood at the front, pointing at a map dotted with fresh intel markers. "Enemy hit us hard last night," he said, voice clipped. "We're not gonna sit on our asses and wait for round 2. Battalion wants aggressive patrols. We sweep, we push them back, we show them we're not scared." He jabbed at a red circle on the map. "Village here. Reports of weapons caches and fighters moving through. Alpha platoon's gonna pay them a visit." Lane felt the tension spike. Everyone knew what visit meant. Kicking down doors. Searching homes. Staring into eyes that could be innocent or complicit, or both. "Lane, you've got point, team," Rollins said, meeting her gaze. "I want clean execution. No mistakes." "Yes, sir," Lane replied evenly, though inside she felt the familiar twist of doubt. Clean execution? In this war nothing was clean. The road to the village. Their convoy rumbled out mid-morning, dust plumes trailing behind. Lane rode in the lead MRAP, her fire team packed tight around her. Ellis gripped the wheel again, jaw set. Alvarez sat across from him, cleaning his weapon obsessively. Kim adjusted the optic on her rifle. Dorsey tapped his helmet, humming some half-forgotten country tune. Lane studied them one by one. They were young, some barely shaving, yet already carved by combat. Alvarez the rock. Kim precise as a surgeon. Dorsey reckless but loyal. Ellis still fragile but learning. They were hers. Her responsibility. And responsibility meant every bad call, every hesitation, every death would land squarely on her shoulders. She looked out the armored window at the barren hills rolling by. The land looked lifeless, but she knew better. Somewhere out there, eyes watched them through rifle scopes. Somewhere out there, another ambush waited. "Sergeant," Ellis said suddenly, breaking the silence. You think this is one of those villages where they hide stuff under the mosques?" Lane didn't answer right away. She'd seen too much to believe in easy answers. "You think too much," she finally said. "Focus on the road. That's where death usually waits." Dorsey chuckled darkly. "That's comforting. The village." They rolled into the village by noon. Mud brick houses clustered together, narrow alleys snaking between them. Children scattered at the sight of armored vehicles, while elders stood stiff, faces blank masks. Women pulled shawls tighter, eyes averted. Lane felt the tension coil in her gut. This was the part she hated most, the not knowing. Every doorway could hide a rifle. Every smile could hide malice. "Dismount," she ordered. Boots hit dirt. Her team fanned out, rifles at the ready. "Second squad, left side," Rollins' voice crackled over comms. "Lane, sweep the market square." "Copy." They moved in, checking corners, clearing stalls. The market was abandoned, baskets overturned, dust thick on fruit stands. Too quiet. Always too quiet. Lane raised a fist, halt. She scanned the rooftops, the windows, the shadows. Her instincts screamed at her. Then she saw it. A boy, maybe 12, peeking from a doorway. His eyes wide, terrified, not of them but of something else. "Alvarez, eyes on that kid," Lane murmured. Before Alvarez could respond, the boy bolted. He sprinted across the square, disappearing into an alley. Dorsey cursed. "Should we grab him?" Lane shook her head. Chasing kids was suicide. But her gut twisted harder. Seconds later, the first shot cracked. Contact. The square erupted. Bullets tore from the rooftops, ripping into the cobblestones around them. A PKM thundered from a second-story window, tracers stitching the air. "Contact north." Lane shouted, diving for cover. "Return fire." Her team scattered, laying down suppressive bursts. Dorsey screamed something half-coherent as he fired. Alvarez crouched behind a stone wall, methodically picking targets. Kim shouted target bearings with mechanical precision. Ellis froze, wide-eyed in the open. Lane's blood iced. "Ellis, move," she roared. He stumbled, dove behind a cart just as bullets shredded the air where he'd stood. Lane cursed, leaned out, and dropped a rooftop gunman with 2 clean shots. "Rollins, we're pinned in the square," she yelled into comms. "Hold. Third squad's flanking." "Hold. Always hold." Lane clenched her teeth. They could hold all day and still bleed out. She needed options. Her eyes tracked the boy again. He'd reappeared, waving frantically from a side alley. She frowned. Was it a trap? Or a warning? She made the call. "Kim, cover." "Alvarez, Dorsey, you're with me." They bounded toward the alley, bullets snapping overhead. Lane slid in, heart hammering. The boy was gone, but ahead she spotted a narrow stairwell leading up. "Rooftop access," she said. "Let's clear it." Rooftop fight. They stormed the stairs, boots thundering on stone. At the top, an insurgent spun toward them with an AK. Lane fired first, cutting him down. They burst onto the rooftop, smoke and gunfire filling the sky. From here they could see the whole square, the muzzle flashes, the chaos, the arcs of tracer fire. Lane dropped to a knee, picked targets, and fired in controlled bursts. Each shot landed. Each shot thinned the pressure on her team below. Alvarez took the other flank, roaring curses with every pull of the trigger. Dorsey laughed like a man possessed, his weapon chattering non-stop. The tide shifted. Soldiers in the square pushed forward, insurgents breaking under the pressure. Lane's headset crackled. Third squad cleared the north alley. They're falling back. Lane exhaled, adrenaline still scorching her veins. She scanned for stragglers, then froze. Across the rooftops, a figure moved, tall, deliberate, carrying an RPG. He wasn't aiming at soldiers. He was aiming at the convoy of MRAPs parked at the village edge. If he hit one, the fuel would ignite, the blast ripping through anyone nearby. Lane didn't think. She sprinted across the rooftop, vaulting low walls, boots pounding. The gunman swung the launcher onto his shoulder. She dove, slamming into him just as he fired. The rocket screamed wild, detonating harmlessly in the hills. They crashed onto the rooftop, wrestling. He was strong, wiry, desperate. His knife flashed. Lane caught his wrist, snarled, and drove her elbow into his jaw. The knife clattered. She slammed her rifle stock into his temple once, twice, until he went limp. She stood, chest heaving, blood smeared across her gloves. Below, the square was theirs. The village was quiet again. Too quiet. Aftermath. Hours later, the platoon regrouped. They had seized caches of rifles and explosives, detained 3 suspects, and counted at least 10 enemy dead. But the cost was theirs too. 2 soldiers wounded, 1 critical. Rollins debriefed grimly, but his eyes kept flicking to Lane. He'd seen her chase the RPG gunman. He knew she'd saved lives. But he also knew she'd taken risks, big ones. When the meeting ended, he caught her outside. "Lane," he said low, away from the others. "That was reckless. Brave but reckless." She met his gaze coldly. "It worked. For now," he said. He studied her. "You ever think you've got something to prove?" Her stomach clenched. "What do you mean?" "I saw that logbook," he said. "That word. Crosswind. I don't buy your hunting story. You've got history, Lane. I don't know what kind. But I can tell it drives you." Lane said nothing. She couldn't. Rollins sighed. "Just don't let it drive you into a grave. Or worse, drive your soldiers there." He walked away, leaving her alone in the fading light. Nightfall. Back at the FOB, the soldiers cleaned weapons and patched gear. Ellis approached Lane, awkward but determined. "Sarge," he said. I froze out there. Again." Lane shook her head. "You moved when it counted. That's what matters." "But, Ellis." She looked him square in the eye. "Fear's normal. What you do after, that's what defines you. You kept driving yesterday. You moved today. That's progress." He swallowed, nodded. "Thanks, Sarge." She clapped his shoulder. He'd learn. Or die. That was the truth none of them said aloud. Later, Lane sat alone by the perimeter wall, watching the desert stars burn cold above. She thought about Rollins' words. About the boy who tried to warn them. About the insurgents she'd killed with her bare hands. And about the word Crosswind. It wasn't just history. It was a code name from a mission years ago, a mission scrubbed from official records but etched in her memory. A mission where things had gone wrong, very wrong. Now the name had surfaced again. Someone had written it in the logbook. Someone who knew. And that meant the past she had buried wasn't just chasing her. It was already here. The night was cold enough to bite through body armor. Sergeant Mara Lane sat against the perimeter wall, her rifle across her lap, watching the desert breathe under the stars. Most of the FOB was asleep, but Lane never trusted sleep. Not here. Not after what she'd seen. Her fingers tapped unconsciously against the receiver of her rifle, rhythm steady, like a metronome counting seconds. Every sound pressed against her nerves, the whine of the generator, the crackle of radios, the distant howl of a jackal. And beneath it all, the name echoing in her head. Crosswind. It wasn't just a name. It was a scar. A code name for a mission that went wrong, burned into her memory like a brand. She'd buried it. But now, someone had dragged it back into the light, and that meant one thing. Her past was no longer safe. "Lane." She jerked her head up. Alvarez approached, cigarette dangling from his lips, face gaunt with fatigue. He dropped beside her, offered her the pack. She shook her head. I quit years ago. Hell, so did I. Guess war makes liars out of both of us. He lit another, smoke curling into the dark. After a moment he glanced at her. You're jumpier than usual. Something on your mind? Lane looked away. She trusted Alvarez, more than most, but trust was still a dangerous luxury. Just thinking. About the kid in the village? He asked. About all of it, she said. Alvarez studied her, then let it drop. That was why Lane respected him. He didn't press. Soldiers carried their ghosts in silence. Morning orders. At dawn, the briefing tent buzzed with tension. Captain Rollins stood over the map again, jaw set tight. Intel suggests the cell that hit us is regrouping, he said. We've got chatter about them planting more IEDs along supply routes. Battalion wants interdiction patrols. He pointed at a stretch of highway marked with red X's. Convoys need that road clear. We sweep it today. Lane, your fire team's in the lead vehicle. Lane's gut twisted. Lead meant first contact. Lead meant the first to die. Yes, sir, she said evenly. As the briefing ended, Rollins caught her eye. A flicker of something passed between them, warning maybe, or suspicion. He hadn't forgotten Crosswind. The convoy. By mid-morning, their MRAPs rolled onto the open highway, dust devils swirling in their wake. Lane sat shotgun, scanning the horizon through polarized goggles. Ellis drove, jaw clenched, sweat already dripping down his neck. Behind them, the convoy stretched out. Fuel trucks, supply carriers, more MRAPs bristling with gunners. They were a moving target, loud and obvious. Lane's headset crackled with chatter. Second MRAP all clear. Third, no signs yet. Lane leaned toward Ellis. Slow down on curves. That's where they plant 'em. Yes, Sarge. She watched the road, every piece of debris a possible bomb. A dead goat carcass. A pile of trash. A patch of disturbed dirt. Each one could be nothing, or everything. Her heart thudded in rhythm with the tires. Halfway through the stretch, the first blast came. The blast. The world ripped open in fire. The second MRAP vanished in a ball of dust and flame, the shockwave rocking Lane's vehicle sideways. Shrapnel clanged against the armor. Ellis cursed, wrestling the wheel. Ambush! Ambush! Rollins barked over comms. Gunfire erupted from the ridgelines. Bullets cracked past, pinging off steel. The convoy was trapped in a kill zone. Drive, Ellis. Lane shouted. Push through. He gunned the engine, swerving around the burning wreck. Lane popped her hatch, stood into the turret, and opened fire with the mounted .50 cal. The heavy gun roared, tracers stitching across the ridge, shredding rocks and bodies alike. Her soldiers fired from hatches and windows. Alvarez's voice boomed over comms. Contact right flank. RPGs. Lane swung the .50 cal, dropping 2 fighters before their launchers could fire. But more poured over the ridge. Too many. Convoy halt. Return fire. Rollins ordered. No. Lane snarled into her mic. If we stop, we die. There was a pause, then Rollins' grudging reply. Push through. All vehicles pushed through. Engines roared. The convoy surged forward, gunners blazing. The push. The next 5 minutes were chaos. Bullets slashing, RPGs shrieking, vehicles swerving around debris and craters. Lane's throat was raw from shouting orders, her arms aching from the recoil of the heavy gun. Ellis drove like a man possessed, weaving through fire, knuckles white on the wheel. Hold it steady. Lane yelled, cutting down another fighter. I'm trying, Sarge. Behind them, one of the fuel trucks took an RPG hit. It erupted, flames spewing skyward, black smoke choking the air. Lane's heart clenched, 2 soldiers gone in a blink. They pushed on, tires chewing dirt, until the gunfire thinned, then faded. The convoy burst out of the kill zone, battered but alive. For now. Aftermath. They halted miles later in a secure zone. Smoke still smeared the horizon where the ambush had been. Medics rushed to the wounded. Soldiers staggered out of vehicles, faces gray with shock. Lane climbed down, legs trembling, ears ringing. She scanned her fire team. Alvarez scratched but alive. Kim calm as always, Dorsey's hands shaking, Ellis pale but standing. All present. Relief washed through her, bitter and fleeting. Rollins stormed over, fury blazing. You disobeyed my halt order, Lane? You'd rather we got boxed in and slaughtered? She shot back. His jaw worked. Finally he exhaled. You saved us. But don't think this conversation is over. He walked off, leaving her seething. Dorsey muttered, "Guy should be thanking you on his knees." Lane ignored him. Her mind was elsewhere, on the ambush, on the precision of it. The enemy knew their route, their timing, their formation. That wasn't luck. That was intel. Someone had fed them information. The letter. That night, as the FOB settled back into uneasy routine, Lane returned to her quarters. On her bunk sat an envelope, plain, unmarked. Her blood chilled. Nobody left letters here. Not without reason. She opened it with steady hands. Inside was a single sheet of paper. One word scrawled in black ink. Crosswind. Her chest tightened. Someone new. Someone here. She crushed the paper in her fist, fury and fear battling in her veins. A voice startled her. "Rough day?" She spun. It was Kim, standing in the doorway, expression unreadable. "Yeah," Lane said quickly, shoving the paper into her pocket. Kim studied her a long moment, then nodded. "We all need rest. Tomorrow won't be easier." When Kim left, Lane sank onto her bunk, heart hammering. She had enemies outside the wire. But now she had one inside too. Midnight thoughts. Sleep didn't come. Lane lay awake, staring at the tent ceiling, listening to the bass hum with generators and distant radio chatter. Her mind replayed the ambush, the explosion, the screaming. Then the letter. She thought about the mission years ago. The one tied to Crosswind. The one no one was supposed to know. A mission that had ended in betrayal, blood, and silence. And now someone was dragging it back. She turned over, fists clenched. Whoever left that letter wanted her rattled. Wanted her looking over her shoulder. Fine. She would. But she'd also start looking back. If war had taught her anything, it was this. Secrets don't stay buried. And when they crawl out of the ground, they bring death with them. Lane wasn't sure if it would be hers, her soldiers, or her enemies. But she knew one thing. The word Crosswind wasn't a ghost anymore. It was a storm coming straight for her. The night air in the village was thicker than gunpowder smoke. After the blast that tore through the captain's patrol, silence hung heavy, unnatural silence, the kind that made soldiers clutch rifles tighter and breathe slower. The only sound was the faint crackle of flames devouring the wreckage of the Humvee. Sergeant Mara Vance crouched behind a low wall, eyes fixed on the horizon. Her pulse was steady, but her hands carried the faint tremor of adrenaline. Crosswind. The name had already spread like fire through the platoon. No one said it aloud in her presence, but she could see it written in the way their eyes lingered on her patch. They were wondering the same thing. How did she know him, and why did the enemy captain die whispering that name? Contacts North Alley. PFC Rollins hissed, pointing his M4. Shadows slipped between buildings, rifles glinting in the moonlight. "Hold fire," Mara ordered, voice low but firm. "They're baiting us. They want us to light up so they can triangulate." "Then what do we do, Sergeant?" Rollins asked, sweat running down his cheek. She scanned the rooftops, the alleys, the windows. Then she spotted it, just a glimmer, the faintest shimmer of glass reflecting flame. A sniper's scope. Her instincts fired before thought. She grabbed Rollins by the collar and yanked him to the dirt as the round cracked past where his head had been. The squad reacted instantly. Muzzle flashes lit the street, suppressing fire hammering the rooftops. Mara darted from cover, slid behind an overturned cart and leveled her rifle. She fired 3 bursts, controlled and precise, each shot finding its mark. 2 figures crumpled, sliding off a rooftop. The third melted back into shadow. "Push left flank," she barked. The squad moved in unison, clearing the alley, advancing with practiced aggression. Yet Mara's mind wasn't on the fight, it was on the way the sniper had aimed. Not at the patrol. Not at random. Directly at Rollins. Almost as if the enemy knew who the weakest link was. They fought through the night. By dawn, the village was secured, the enemy scattered. But victory tasted like dust. They'd lost 2 men to hidden IEDs, and the captain's death still hung over them. When the sun bled over the ridges, Lieutenant Harland called a halt. The men collapsed in a burned-out courtyard, weapons resting across their laps. Harland's eyes locked on Mara. "Sergeant Vance. Walk with me." The words weren't a request. She followed him beyond the rubble until the squad was out of earshot. Harland lit a cigarette, exhaling slow. His face was drawn, his eyes bloodshot. "You fought well last night," he said flatly. "But let's not dance around it. What the hell is Crosswind?" Her jaw tightened. "With respect, sir, I don't know how the enemy got that name." "That wasn't my question," Harland snapped. "Who, or what, the hell is Crosswind?" Memory stirred, unbidden. Years back. Afghanistan. Another village, another squad. A man with eyes sharp as razors, a sniper's patience, and the kind of cold humor that cut deeper than bullets. Mara had known him before he became a ghost story. But she couldn't tell Harlan that. Not yet. Permission to speak freely, sir? She asked. You'd better. Crosswind is a code name, Mara said carefully. It belonged to a soldier. American. He was one of the best. But he went off book. Disappeared. Some said he was Kia. Some said he flipped. I don't know which story is true. Harlan's jaw clenched. And now our enemy captain dies saying that name while looking at you. That coincidence. She didn't answer. Look, Harlan said, lowering his voice, I've got brass breathing down my neck, a squad starting to whisper and locals acting like the devil just walked through their mosque. If you know something, you'd better spill before this turns into a mutiny. Mara locked eyes with him. Sir, if Crosswind is here, we're in more danger than we realize. Because if he's alive, he's not working for us anymore. That night, they bivouacked on the outskirts of the village. Tension coiled through every shadow. Rollins tried to joke as he cleaned his rifle, but his laughter died when no one joined in. Private Ellis muttered prayers under his breath, knuckles white around his rosary. Mara lay awake, staring at the stars. Her mind replayed every detail, the sniper's aim, the enemy captain's dying words, the glimmer of recognition in those eyes. Crosswind had been her mentor once. He taught her how to breathe between heartbeats, how to squeeze instead of pull, how to make one bullet matter more than 100. Now he was hunting them. At 0200, the first mortar round slammed into the courtyard. Dirt and fire erupted, screams piercing the night. Mara rolled to her feet, dragging Rollins out of the blast radius. Incoming rounds turned the bivouac into chaos. Contact. West Ridge. Harlan roared. The squad scrambled for cover, firing blindly into the hills. Mara grabbed binoculars, scanning the ridge. Then she saw it. One figure standing calm amid the smoke, guiding mortar fire with hand signals. Her blood ran cold. Crosswind. Harlan, she shouted. It's him. He's calling the shots. The lieutenant swore, radioing for counter-battery fire. But before coordinates could be relayed, the figure vanished into the haze. The attack lasted 7 minutes. By the end, 3 men were dead and ammo crates burned in the wreckage. The squad was shaken, their trust unraveling thread by thread. In the smoking aftermath, Harlan pulled Mara aside again. His tone was quieter now, almost pleading. If you know how to beat him, now's the time. She took a breath, steadying herself. Crosswind doesn't fight wars. He hunts people. He studies squads, finds their weaknesses, then tears them apart from the inside. If he's here, he's not just here to kill us. He's here to send a message. Harlan narrowed his eyes. To you. She didn't answer. 2 days later, they pushed deeper into enemy territory. The hills closed in, valleys narrowing into choke points. Every step felt watched. Every rustle of wind felt like a warning. Mara led point, senses stretched thin. She forced herself to crack a joke with Rollins to keep his nerves steady. Humor had always been a weapon in war, sometimes the only thing keeping men from breaking. You know, she said quietly, if we make it back, I'm putting in a request for hazard pay. For what? Rollins muttered. For babysitting you. Pretty sure that sniper only missed, 'cause he was laughing at your haircut. Rollins gave a weak chuckle. Ma'am, with respect, your jokes are worse than incoming fire. She smirked. It wasn't much, but it kept the fear from swallowing them. By evening they reached a mountain pass. Harlan called a halt, ordering security positions. Mara scanned the cliffs with her scope. That's when she saw it. 3 stones arranged unnaturally, stacked like a signal. Only one man used markers like that. Her heart clenched. He was close. Harlan, she whispered, we're walking into a kill zone. How do you know? She pointed to the stones. His face paled. What do you recommend, Sergeant? She hesitated. One wrong call and half the squad would die. We pull back. Circle wide. Force him to shift position. Harlan nodded. Make it happen. But as she gave the order, a single shot cracked from the ridge. Private Ellis dropped instantly, blood pooling beneath him. Panic rippled through the squad. Sniper. They scattered for cover, firing blindly at the ridgeline. Mara dove beside Rollins, heart pounding. She knew that shot, clean, perfect, merciless. It wasn't meant to miss. It wasn't meant to warn. It was meant to break them. And it was working. For the next 3 hours, Crosswind pinned them in the valley. Every attempt to move drew fire. He wasn't killing everyone, just enough to keep them trapped, morale crumbling. It was psychological warfare, pure and brutal. Finally, Harland crawled to Mara's position. His face was streaked with dirt and sweat. "We can't stay pinned here. If you know how he thinks, now's the time." She looked at him, then at her squad, exhausted, scared, bleeding. Crosswind wanted her to play his game. He always had. And if she didn't, he'd keep killing them one by one. "I'll draw him out," Mara said. Harland's eyes widened. "That's suicide." "Not if I can make him talk," she replied. Rollins overheard, shaking his head. "Sergeant, you can't." "I can," she cut in, voice sharp. "And I will. This is my fight. He wants me." Harland studied her for a long moment, then finally nodded. "You've got one chance. Don't waste it." At dusk, Mara stepped into the open valley. She slung her rifle low, making herself an easy target. Her heart thundered, but her stride was steady. She knew Crosswind was watching. She could almost feel his scope on her chest. She stopped in the center of the kill zone, raised her voice. "Crosswind, you want me?" "I'm right here." Silence answered. Then from the ridgeline, a voice echoed, low, calm, and chillingly familiar. "Mara Vance." Still breathing between heartbeats. The sound froze her blood. It was him. Alive. And hunting her. The ridgeline was quiet but not empty. Mara could feel him there, as sure as the rifle hanging at her side. Crosswind wasn't just another sniper hidden in the rocks. He was the ghost that trained her, the shadow she thought buried with the last war. "Mara Vance." The voice carried again, drifting across the valley like smoke. Calm, deliberate, almost playful. Still breathing between heartbeats. Still standing in the open like you're untouchable. Her throat tightened, but she forced steel into her voice. "You should have stayed buried, Cross." A chuckle came back, low and mocking. "You know better. Ghosts don't stay buried. They haunt. And I'm haunting you." From behind boulders and shattered walls, her squad watched with wide eyes. Rollins gripped his rifle so tight his knuckles blanched, wanting to fire but too scared of what a missed shot might bring. Harland crouched low, his expression hard. He hadn't given the order to intervene. This was between Mara and the Phantom. "Why here? Why now?" Mara demanded, her voice echoing through the valley. Pause. Then, "Because you're still breathing and I can't let that stand." A gunshot cracked. Dirt spat a foot from her boots. Not a miss. A warning. Crosswind was hurting her, testing her nerve. She knew his game. "You're fighting with the wrong side, Cross," she shouted. "These men, you trained to fight them, not with them." "Wrong side." His voice came sharper now. "You think there are sides left? There's just survival. And control. I took control when I stopped taking orders from politicians who never bled." Mara steadied her breathing. If she lost herself to his words, she'd lose everything. Crosswind thrived on breaking minds before he broke bodies. "You trained me to fight smart," she said, letting a bitter smile tug at her lips. "Guess that makes me the only one here who can finish you." Another pause. Then laughter rolled down from the ridge. "That's why I like you, Vance. Always mouthy, always reckless. But tell me, how many of your squad are dead already? How many because you brought them into my hunting grounds?" Mara's jaw clenched. 3 dead in the mortar strike. Ellis shot like target practice. The weight pressed on her chest. She couldn't give him the satisfaction of seeing it break her. So she did what soldiers had always done to survive. She used humor like armor. "You always did talk too much, Cross," she called. "Guess that's what happens when you have no friends left." The valley went quiet. Too quiet. Then a single shot cracked, this time aimed at her helmet. The round punched through her night vision mount, snapping the device clean off her head. The squad gasped. Mara didn't flinch. She stood tall, staring at the ridgeline. Her heart thundered, but her voice stayed steady. "That's the difference between us, Cross. You aim for helmets. I aim for hearts." The standoff stretched into minutes. Finally, Harland crawled up behind her, whispering urgently. "Sergeant, he's toying with you. We need to fall back before he wipes us all." She shook her head. "If we pull back, he'll follow. He's not after you, he's after me." Harland's jaw tightened. "And if you stay? Then maybe the rest of you live." Before he could reply, a sudden rattle of gunfire erupted from the ridgeline. Figures poured down, enemy fighters moving in disciplined lines. Crosswind wasn't alone, he'd brought a company. "Contact. East Ridge." Rollins yelled, opening fire. The valley exploded into chaos. Bullets tore into stone and dirt. Mara dropped flat, rifle snapping up as she returned fire. The squad fought like cornered wolves, but the enemy had numbers and the high ground. "Fall back to the riverbed." Harland bellowed. Go, go. The soldiers scrambled, dragging the wounded, laying down suppressing fire. Mara covered their retreat, every shot measured, controlled, deadly. But she felt it, Crosswind wasn't trying to overrun them. He was corralling them again, pushing them exactly where he wanted. By the time they reached the riverbed, 2 more men were down. Ammo ran thin. Dust and blood caked every face. Rollins panted beside Mara. Why don't we just call air support? And this. She shook her head grimly. Crosswind knows our comms range. He'll jam it. Besides, he doesn't want to be bombed. He wants to end it up close. Night fell. The squad dug in along the dry riverbed, setting claymores and tripwires. Every man knew they were sitting ducks if Crosswind came again. Mara took first watch. Her eyes never left the ridgeline. She could feel him out there, circling, waiting. Harlan sat beside her after midnight. He passed her a canteen. His voice was quiet, almost resigned. You trained under him, didn't you? She didn't answer at first. Finally she nodded. He taught me everything I know about killing. And everything I wish I didn't know about surviving. Then how do we beat him? Harlan asked. Her jaw tightened. The same way you beat a ghost. You stop running from it. You hunt it back. At dawn the squad moved. They didn't wait to be hunted. They turned predator. Mara led them up the cliffs, through goat trails and broken shale, silent as shadows. Every man carried fear in his eyes, but there was something else now, purpose. If they were going to die, they'd do it fighting, not waiting. Hours later they found it, a hidden encampment carved into the mountainside. Tets, ammo caches, maps pinned to walls showing patrol routes, including their own. And on one canvas wall, spray-painted in crude black letters, Crosswind. Rollins swallowed hard. Jesus Christ. Quiet, Mara whispered, motioning them forward. They moved through the camp like wraiths, clearing it building by building. But it was too easy. Too quiet. Then Mara spotted it, a journal on a crate. She opened it. Inside were notes, detailed observations of every soldier in her squad. Their habits, their fears, their weaknesses. Pages of psychological profiles. And on the last page, written in sharp, deliberate ink. Vance will come for me. Alone. Wait. Her blood went cold. He'd baited them here. Ambush, she screamed. The mountain erupted with fire. Bullets ripped into the camp from all sides. Grenades rolled down slopes, blasting dirt and steel skyward. The squad dove for cover, returning fire desperately. Harlan shouted into the radio, static screaming back. Jam. Mara's mind raced. Crosswind had predicted everything, even this. The only way to break the trap was to break his pattern. Cover me, she yelled, sprinting across open ground. She dove into a half-collapsed shack, scanning for high ground. She saw it, a narrow chute of rock leading to an overhang above the enemy lines. She scrambled upward, bullets sparking around her. Hands bleeding, lungs burning, she climbed. And then, there he was. Crosswind. Crouched on the ridge, rifle steady, his eyes locking with hers through the scope. For a heartbeat, neither moved. Mentor and student. Hunter and hunted. Then he smirked. Still breathing between heartbeats. Her rifle came up. His finger tightened on the trigger. Both fired. The valley thundered. Mara's shoulder burned as his round grazed her, spinning her against the rock. Her own shot slammed into his side, blood spraying as he staggered. But he didn't fall. He smiled through the pain, lowering his rifle. That's why I chose you. Then he dropped a smoke grenade at his feet. The ridge vanished in white haze. When it cleared, he was gone. The squad regrouped, battered but alive. They'd lost more men, but they'd survived the ambush. Harlan approached Mara, face grim. You hit him? She nodded, wincing as Rollins bandaged her shoulder. But not enough. Then he'll be back, Harlan said quietly. Mara stared at the ridgeline, her expression carved from stone. Good. Let him come. Next time I won't miss. But deep inside she knew the truth. Crosswind hadn't come to kill her. Not yet. He was testing her. Shaping her. Just like before. And this time he wasn't just haunting her, he was haunting them all. The mountains held their breath. Dawn was pale on the horizon, cold light spilling across jagged ridges and burned-out earth. Mara Vance sat on a rock at the edge of the shattered enemy camp, her shoulder throbbing under fresh bandages. She had slept maybe 30 minutes, but her eyes were clear, sharp. Too sharp. Crosswind had seen to that. He'd carved her into a weapon years ago, and now he was using her like a mirror. Lieutenant Harlan paced behind her, boots crunching gravel. He was chain-smoking again, face hollow with exhaustion. Rollins cleaned his weapon nearby, hands trembling just enough for Mara to notice but not enough for him to admit. The rest of the squad was scattered through the ruined camp, gathering ammo, burning enemy maps, anything to keep their minds off what they all knew: this wasn't over. "Sergeant," Harlan said finally, voice rough, "this isn't a patrol anymore. This is a goddamn chess match and he's moving us piece by piece." Mara didn't look at him. Her eyes were on the valley, the ridgeline where Crosswind had vanished into smoke. "It's not chess. Chess is clean. This is hunting. He doesn't want to win fast, he wants to watch us bleed." Harlan blew smoke through his teeth. "Then how do we end it?" She turned her head slightly, eyes hard. "We don't run. We make him come to us." By midday the squad was on the move again. They followed the riverbed deeper into the mountains, every step tight with silence. The heat baked down, sweat soaking their uniforms. Flies swarmed the corpses left from the ambush. Rollins broke the silence first, his voice hoarse. "Sarge, what was he to you? Before all this?" Mara kept her eyes forward. "He was my instructor. My mentor. He taught me how to shoot, how to survive. But he also taught me something else. Never trust a man who enjoys war too much." "Sounds like you still respect him," Rollins muttered. "Respect?" she said bitterly. "No. But I understand him. And that makes him twice as dangerous." That evening they found a plateau overlooking the valley. The squad set up a defensive position: claymores, overlapping fields of fire, elevated sniper nests. For once they would choose the ground. Mara walked the perimeter twice, correcting angles, moving men. When she returned, Harlan caught her arm. "You're setting a trap." She nodded. "He'll come for us tonight. He has to. His whole game is control. If we start choosing the ground, he'll take the bait." Harlan studied her for a moment. "And if you're wrong?" "Then we're already dead," Mara said flatly. Night fell like a curtain, fast and heavy. The mountains swallowed the moon. The squad waited, rifles tight, nerves tighter. Minutes crawled like hours. At 0200 the first shadow moved. Then another. Figures crept from the rocks, silent as smoke. Mara's hand tightened on her trigger. Hold, she whispered into comms. The enemy drew closer. 20 meters. 15. 10. Now. The plateau erupted. Claymores shredded the night, fire and steel ripping through the enemy ranks. Rifles hammered from above, cutting down silhouettes in flashes of light. Screams tore the silence. But through it all Mara felt it. A cold presence. Watching. Waiting. Crosswind wasn't in the first wave. He never was. "Shift fire left," she barked, cutting down two fighters charging through smoke. The squad fought like madmen, but the enemy didn't break. They pressed harder, forcing the Americans into a grinding, close-quarters brawl. And then, through the chaos, Mara saw him. Crosswind. Standing calm on the ridge, directing his men with hand signals just out of reach. Her blood surged. She raised her rifle, drew a bead on his chest. A shot cracked, but it wasn't hers. Rollins screamed as a round punched through his thigh, spinning him to the ground. Mara snapped her scope back. Crosswind was gone. The fight lasted an hour. When it was done, the plateau was a graveyard. Enemy bodies sprawled across the rocks. Smoke curled into the cold air. But the squad had paid. 2 more dead. Rollins alive but pale, bleeding heavily as medics worked on his leg. Harlan's face was gray. He crouched beside the wounded, his voice low. "We can't keep this up. Every fight we lose more. He's bleeding us dry." Mara stood over him, rifle hanging in her grip. "That's what he wants. Fear. Doubt. Us tearing ourselves apart." Harlan looked up at her. "Then stop playing his game, Vance. End it." She met his gaze, unflinching. "I will." Morning. The squad buried their dead in silence. Rollins tried to make a joke, something about, "At least I'll get a vacation with this leg." But his voice cracked before the punchline. Mara squeezed his shoulder and forced a thin smile. "Save the jokes for when we're stateside." Inside though, she wasn't smiling. Every loss was her fault. Crosswind wasn't just targeting them, he was targeting her through them. He wanted her isolated, broken. That night, she made her decision. She found Harlan by the fire, staring into the flames. "Sir. Tomorrow I'm going after him." Harlan didn't look at her. "That's suicide." "No," Mara said. "That's the only way this ends. He won't stop until I face him." Finally Harlan turned. His eyes were bloodshot, his voice harsh. "You think I'm gonna let you walk into his sights? He'll gut you and leave the rest of us to rot." She held his gaze. Or he'll chase me and leave you the chance to pull the squad out. You want to save them? Let me be the bait. Harlan swore under his breath, dragging a hand down his face. You sound just like him. No, Mara said coldly. I'm the one who's going to stop him. At dawn, Mara slipped away. She carried only her rifle, a sidearm, 2 grenades, and a pack of rations. She left the squad behind, knowing they'd curse her for it, but also knowing it was the only way to break Crosswind's grip. The mountains closed around her as she moved, each step deliberate, silent. She followed his patterns, his signs, the subtle rock markers, the carved arrows on trees, the footprints he wanted her to see. By midday, she reached a narrow canyon. She stopped, listening. The air was too still. Welcome back, Vance, a voice drawled from above. Her blood chilled. She raised her rifle slowly. Crosswind stepped from the rocks, calm as ever, rifle slung casually over his shoulder. He looked older now, lines carved deep into his face, but his eyes burned with the same ruthless fire. You came alone, he said. Smart. Brave. Stupid. Let's finish this, Mara said, voice steady. He tilted his head, almost amused. Finish? Oh, Mara. This isn't the end. This is the beginning. I've been shaping you for this. Every fight, every loss, it's carving you into something better. Stronger. Her stomach twisted. You killed my men to teach me? To free you, he corrected. The army makes tools. I make predators. You're almost ready. She leveled her rifle at his chest. I'm not your student anymore. He smiled, slow and cruel. Then prove it. The canyon exploded in gunfire. Mara dove for cover, bullets sparking off stone. Crosswind moved like a phantom, his shots precise, forcing her to shift constantly. She fired back, controlled bursts, aiming not just to kill but to hurt him, drive him where she wanted. He was good, better than anyone she'd ever faced, but she wasn't the same soldier he trained years ago. Minutes stretched like hours. Dust filled the air. The canyon became a battlefield of echoes, each shot ringing like a duel of ghosts. Finally, Mara spotted him crossing open ground. She steadied her breath between heartbeats and fired. Her round struck true, slamming into his shoulder. He staggered, blood spraying. But instead of falling, he laughed. Good, he coughed, blood on his lips. You're learning. She advanced, rifle trained on him. It's over, Cross. He dropped his rifle, hands slick with blood. But his eyes burned brighter than ever. No, Mara. It's only just begun. Before she could react, he pulled a detonator from his vest and pressed the trigger. The canyon walls erupted. Explosives buried in the rock detonated in a chain, fire and stone cascading down. Mara dove as the world collapsed. When she came to, dust choked the air. Her ears rang. The canyon was rubble, fire flickering among shattered stone. Crosswind was gone, vanished into the chaos, his blood trail disappearing into shadow. Mara staggered to her feet, coughing, body battered. She stared at the wreckage, fury boiling in her chest. He'd escaped again. But not before leaving his mark. As she stumbled back toward her squad's position, one thought burned hotter than the pain in her shoulder, hotter than the rage in her chest. Crosswind wasn't just hunting her anymore. He was preparing her. And she didn't know if that terrified her, or gave her the strength to finish him. The basic Cuner had never felt so tense. Sandbags lined the walls higher than before, the gates reinforced, the hum of generators filling the silence between nervous conversations. Word had spread. Operation Iron Veil was over. Captain Reyes' team had dismantled the insurgents' weapons. Ring cut off the flow of explosives, but the cost had been brutal. Sergeant Nolan was gone. The villagers still lived in fear. And the legend of Crosswind was now more than a rumor. It was a living, breathing presence in the unit. Specialist Claire Donovan, the woman once known only by that code name, sat alone in the mess tent with a bowl of untouched rations. Her rifle lay across her knees, freshly cleaned. She wasn't eating, she was thinking. Every decision had spiraled into something she hadn't predicted. The ambush on Route Sentinel. The betrayal in the hills. The gunfight in the caves. Each action weighed on her like invisible body armor, heavier by the day. Mind if I sit? Private Harris dropped onto the bench across from her, tray clattering. He had that irrepressible grin again, though his eyes betrayed fatigue. You've been dodging everyone, Crosswind, he teased. Don't, she said sharply. Not here. Not that name. Harris raised his hands in mock surrender. Fine. Claire it is. But you can't pretend that ghost of yours isn't walking around with you. Half the company swears you were something else before this deployment. She didn't answer. She just stared at the steam rising off his coffee. Before Harris could press further, Captain Reyes entered the tent. The chatter died. His presence carried weight now, earned in blood. Briefing in 10, Reyes announced. Everyone eats fast, grabs their gear. It's not over yet. The last operation. In the command tent, the maps were spread wide, dotted with markers that told a grim story. Reyes pointed to a red zone deep in the mountains. Our intel confirms the insurgents are regrouping here. They're wounded but not broken. If they rearm, everything we bled for these past months will be wasted. We've got one shot to end this cycle. Another raid? Harris asked. Not just a raid, Reyes said. We're cutting the head off the snake. Their commander, codename Falconer, is holed up in that valley. If we take him out, the rest scatter. No more IEDs on convoys. No more ambushes on villages. Claire's chest tightened. She knew that valley. Narrow ridges, blind corners, perfect for traps. Going in meant walking straight into the lion's jaws. Reyes' gaze landed on her. Specialist Donovan. You know the terrain. Your point. Can you handle it? Her pulse thudded. This was the moment. Yes, sir, she said, voice steady. Good. Gear up. Wheels up at 0300. Into the valley. The Chinook thundered low over the peaks, blades chopping the frozen night. Inside, the squad sat shoulder to shoulder, rifles across their chests, eyes grim. No one joked this time. Even Harris was quiet, chewing gum with clenched teeth. Claire checked her gear again. M4, sidearm, extra mags, grenades, NVGs. She slid her fingers across the rifle stock where she'd etched a small cross. A promise to Nolan. This ends tonight. Reyes leaned close over the roar of the rotors. You good? Good, she said. But deep inside she wondered. Was she ready for the final wait? For the decision she knew was coming? The ramp dropped and the icy wind hit them. They spilled into darkness, boots crunching stone. The bird lifted, leaving them in a silence so complete it pressed on their ears. Claire raised her fist, signaling halt. The valley yawned ahead, black rock, narrow path, cliffs looming like jagged teeth. She could feel eyes watching already. Crosswind, Harris whispered behind her. You sure about this trail? Shut up and follow, she said. They moved in. The ambush. The first shot cracked from the ridge. A tracer snapped past Claire's helmet. She dove for cover, barking. Contact left. Gunfire erupted, muzzle flashes sparking the cliffs. Bullets shredded rock inches above their heads. The valley lit with chaos. Suppressing fire. Reyes shouted, unleashing bursts. Claire's instincts took over. She spotted 3 figures on the ridge, shadows dancing in the muzzle glow. She squeezed, 2 went down. The third ducked. Harris hurled a grenade uphill. The explosion shook loose gravel and silence followed, brief, uneasy silence. Then came the whistling shriek. Mortars. Down. Claire screamed. The blast slammed the ground, dirt and flame erupting around them. Ears rang. The squad scattered behind boulders, pinned. Reyes crawled to her side. We walk into a kill box. Ideas? She swallowed, scanning the cliffs. The enemy was everywhere, firing down. Staying meant death. Retreat meant failure. Her eyes caught a faint glow up the slope, a signal lamp, flashing. Someone was guiding the mortar fire. I can get there, she said. Reyes' eyes locked on hers. It's suicide. Not if I move now. He hesitated. Go. Harris, cover her. Crosswind's climb. Claire bolted, sprinting across open rock as bullets zipped past. Harris laid down fire, shouting curses between bursts. She reached the base of the slope, fingers digging into cold stone. She climbed fast, adrenaline burning her muscles. Above, the lamp winked again. A figure in dark robes swung the lamp, radio at his belt. She crested the ridge, drew her knife, and lunged. They struggled, the man clawing at her arm, but she drove the blade home. He crumpled. She smashed the lamp, yanked the radio free, and heard voices, Arabic chatter, coordinates. She switched channels, jamming the signal with static. Below, the mortar fire ceased. Signal down, she called over comms. Push forward. Reyes rallied the squad. They surged up the valley, cutting down defenders as they advanced. The tide turned, but the enemy still fought with fanatic fury. The Falconer. Hours blurred into firefights, grenades, screams. The squad pressed deeper until they reached a fortified cave entrance. Heavy machine guns barked from within, tracer fire slicing the night. This is it, Reyes said. Falconer's inside. Claire felt her chest tighten again. This was what every step had led to. Fragate? Harris asked. No, Claire said. If Falconer's alive, he's worth more than rubble. We take him breathing. Reyes gave her a long look. You're leading us in. They stormed. Flashbangs first, explosions echoing in the cavern. Claire rushed in with her rifle raised. Smoke filled the chamber. Gunfire flashed. Shapes darted. She dropped one then another. Harris moved at her flank, Reyes steady behind. At the far end stood a tall man with a black beard, calm amidst the chaos. Falconer. He fired with precision, dropping one of Reyes' men instantly. Claire charged, sliding behind cover, trading bursts with him. Her round sparked the stone near his head. American dogs. Falconer roared. You will never leave this valley alive. She pressed the trigger, but her mag clicked empty. Falconer raised his weapon. In that frozen instant she thought of Nolan, of every villager's terrified eyes, of every soldier who'd fallen. She launched herself forward, slamming into Falconer. The rifle clattered. They grappled, knives flashing in the dim light. He was strong, trained, relentless. He slashed her arm, hot blood streaking down. She countered, ramming her shoulder into his chest. They crashed to the floor, her hands scrambling for anything. Her fingers closed on a shard of stone. She drove it into his throat. He gurgled, eyes wide, then collapsed still. Silence fell. Falconer down, Reyes breathed. It's over. But Claire knew it wasn't. Not yet. The cost. By dawn the valley was secured. Bodies lay strewn across the rocks. The squad, what remained of it, sat in exhausted silence. Harris had a graze along his temple. Reyes' arm was bandaged. They were alive but hollow. Claire stood at the mouth of the cave, staring at the horizon. She should have felt victory. Instead, only the weight remained. Reyes approached. You saved us all back there. Crosswind or Claire, whatever you want to be called, you earned it. She shook her head. Doesn't feel like winning? He put a hand on her shoulder. It never does. A helicopter descended to extract them, dust whipping. Claire climbed aboard, heart pounding. As the bird lifted, she glanced back at the valley shrinking below. For a moment, she swore she saw a figure on the ridge, a lone man watching. Too far to tell who. Too far to know if it was even real. Harris nudged her. You see something? She blinked. The ridge was empty now. No, she said. But doubt gnawed at her. Falconer was dead, she'd seen him fall. Yet war had a way of birthing new ghosts faster than you could bury the old. Epilogue, the name. Back at the base, soldiers whispered again. About the mission. About the woman who had led the charge, dismantled the signal, and killed Falconer with her bare hands. The whispers carried a name. Not Donovan. Not Claire. Crosswind. She sat in her bunk that night, staring at the rifle across her lap. The name was no longer just a shadow, it was her. But whether it was a curse or a shield, she couldn't decide. Somewhere beyond the wire, another storm was already gathering. She could feel it. And when it came, Crosswind would be waiting. The end.